Hello, I'm Deborah Malone, founder of The Internationalist and host of Internationalist Marketing TV. Today's guests are Taide Guajardo, Chief Brand Officer Europe at Procter& Gamble, and Phil Smith, Director General at ISBA. Taide, Phil, I am so delighted to welcome you both to the show and on a topic that is so relevant and so important. So welcome, welcome, welcome.
Delighted to be here.
Likewise, great to be here and a really important topic.
Oh, wonderful. I'm always delighted when we can start talking about really meaty things right from the beginning. So, but let's just back up a little bit and let's start very generally. You're both part of the WFA, and the WFA Media Board is partnering with the Accessibility Alliance now for the benefit of consumers, advertisers, and the entire marketplace. Would you both tell us a little more about the origins of this initiative?
Sure, maybe I can start. So we started about 2-3 years ago in P&G, trying to address a very interesting opportunity that came across thanks to one of our employees that actually was visually impaired. He made us realize that our advertising actually was not understandable to them, because when you have a visual impairment, you were not really able to understand what was happening in the advertising. So we set our teams to address this, and we found ways to do this. Specifically was through audio description. So the script was happening in the advertising in a parallel audio channel, or open and closed captionings. So we said, okay, perfect. So then let's do this with our advertising. And off we went as P&G. And what we were facing is when we arrived to the publishers and said, okay, we'd like to, provide, for example, audio description, we found out that actually the technology was not there. Even if it exists in the market, in the universe, let's say there is this technology available, our publishers did not have the possibility for us to provide audio description of our advertising. And also our agencies were like, well, this is extra work and, this is difficult. We don't know how to do this. And so this is how we started a little bit the coalition of the willing. So WFA came in, brought other advertisers, other associations, and we started kind of coming together as a team to try to raise awareness about this opportunity. And to make a long story short, we've made some progress, but at one point in time, we said we really needed to get a little bit more organized. And that's where Phil came in, volunteering to help provide the type of organization, direction, and drive and opportunity to influence the industry to be able to advance this. So Phil, I give the word to you now.
Thank you very much, Taide. Yes, we've been working in the UK for some time with members, including with P&G, on the broad topic of accessibility, including audio description. And we've been working with broadcasters as well. We published a guide at the end of 2019. So our local efforts were very much on the same track as the Alliance. And we've always said that we're here to partner with the WFA and to run global prototypes or run global pilots. So when the opportunity came to us to say, well, how can we make this work, international work of the Alliance, come to fruition in a local market, it seemed like a no-brainer for us to jump into the seat. And what we're trying to do is to create exportable models that can succeed in other markets.
That's very generous of you, but it's also amazing to me to think that in this era of technology, that the technology didn't necessarily exist with the publishers, and I understand that it's investment and so on, but an interesting perspective, because I think we've come to assume that it's always there. Well, before we get into a little bit more of the specifics, I think that you both have some really extraordinary statistics about the pervasiveness of both visual impairment and audio impairment. And I think that might be surprising to a number of people. Would you like to start, Taide, with some of that?
Yeah, I can start. So, I mean, it's large, it's meaningful, it's a significant part of the population. My remit is Europe, so I'm thinking now, I'm talking about Europe. We estimate it's about 15% of the European population have some sort of audio or visual impairment. And this means that they are not able to understand what we're saying to them on our advertising. And I need to say this because at one point in time we said, but do they really want to understand it, right? Like, are we doing all this to share, content that they might not be interested in? So earlier last year, we did a research amongst people with viewing and hearing impairments, and we asked them, what do you think about this? And actually, more than half agreed that they would like to understand what's happening because they feel excluded. And 75% of them also mentioned that they see the responsibility of advertisers to make advertising accessible.
Mm.
That's
Yeah,
fascinating.
I mean that 15% is a huge missed audience. So just in raw numbers in the EU, that's 30 million with a visual impairment and 200 million with an audio impairment. The UN forecasts that globally there will be 2.5 billion people living with a hearing impairment of some sort by 2050. So just from the pure point of view of getting messages across to people and allowing them to participate in the messaging we're putting out, that's just a huge missed opportunity.
It certainly is, and the numbers are staggering. I think it doesn't matter whether it's an aging population or whatever it is, but I have a feeling that you're going to be getting this all sorted out before 2050. If this initiative is has the energy that I hear it does. All right, let's go back to you, Taide, for a minute. Could you talk a little bit more about P&G's philosophy of growing markets? I find that quite interesting, and also the need to reach all consumers. I know you started with the story about one of your employees and how this came to light, but I think this is a bigger topic.
Yeah, it is a bigger topic, and it talks about our business strategy. We have actually pivoted, and a few years ago, we have shifted our attention to grow, not by stealing share or conquering share from competition, but actually we found a better way, a more difficult way, but a better way, which was to grow the markets, to really push the confines of the definition of what the market was about. And we do this by actually creating such great products, such great packaging, such compelling communication that reaches 100% of the population, in such great presentation in the retail, in the retails where we distribute our products, that we actually enlarge the pie for everybody. So that way we disproportionately benefit, the trade benefits, and that's how we have actually come to combine the opportunity we have to reach people with viewing and hearing impairments, and the opportunity for us to really, really reach 100% of the population to grow the markets.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because I can remember so many innovative products that have come out of P&G, whether it was even Swiffer or Febreze, products that didn't exist anymore. So sometimes I realize you do it through creating new markets with product innovation. But I think you also seem to have the philosophy that 100% of people do want to do laundry and do want clean laundry and want to brush their teeth, and you do have products that can be of use to all people. So I can certainly understand that.
Absolutely, yes. In fact, we are playing in everyday needs category. So therefore, reaching all of the people that have these basic needs, most of the time, it just makes natural sense to us.
Yeah, and I you've made the case pretty well for why ad accessibility is important to a marketer like P&G with the kind of brands that you have. But could you talk a little bit more about barriers to advertisers? You touched on it with the technology, but could you just outline a little bit more of what some of those barriers might be?
So this is what we found. The first barrier was awareness. So as I started to talk with my peers in other companies, I realized, but just like us, people were not really aware that we were missing this important part of the population, and that there were solutions to be able to address this opportunity. So that's kind of the departure point, awareness. If you don't know it, how can you fix it? Second barrier was when we went to the publishers And we said, can you please enable this? They said, but it's only P&G asking for it. So, all other advertisers were not asking for it. Publishers were not, even if we are the largest advertiser in the world, it was still not enough for them to provide the technical solutions for us to address that. We also had an awareness problem and a capability problem with agencies. In order to do open and closed captions is super easy. So that's a no-brainer and everybody should just do it. But when it comes to audio description, there's a certain craft that needs to be taught to the creative team to be able to do the audio description that is, requiring some minimal, but some investment from the agencies. So that was another barrier. And they also said, but, it's only P&G asking for it initially at the beginning. And then last, some of the technology, so as I said, the technology exists, but sometimes it is not easy to connect it to the existing broadcasters' technology. So, making sure that there is a connection and a possibility to have the technology that is needed for the particular, let's say, installation that a publisher has was the other barrier that we found.
And I can imagine how hard it is, particularly if you have something like a mystery series and you don't want to give it away. But I do recall that just recently, one of your other marketers who's key on this is certainly MasterCard. And when they did their new card, their touch card for the blind, so the blind could tell if it was a debit or a credit card with a different insert in the physical card, they did do a pretty beautiful audio description of their ad, and perhaps that will also help pave the way for a lot of this.
Absolutely. You can take a look at, there's some ads that we call them, inclusive by design. Some ads, because of the nature of the communication, if you close your eyes, you are able to understand the message, you understand the benefits, you understand the brand. Many ads, however, are banking just on the visuals, on the demonstration, on the drama that is happening. And that's where we need to have a separate audio description that says, there's a group of people that is coming into a room, it's a dark room, they're dressed in black, and they're taking a toothpaste, and et cetera, and also describing what is happening so that people with viewing impairments are able to really get a gist as if they were able to see.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And let me ask one last question while you're on it. I know that P&G is pretty good about setting targets. So do you have some accessibility targets now, or that you've accomplished over the past 18 months?
Yes, you're right, because you get what you measure, as they say. So when we set ourselves into the addressing the opportunity of accessibility, our aim was, and we have an ambition to reach 100% accessibility by 2030. So that was the objective, but it was not just a matter of setting the objective, we also had to measure it. So one of the things that we did was we established a collaboration with Extreme Reach, who measures all, basically is where most of our advertising goes through, let's say. They're able to give us a measure of what percentage of our advertising has open, closed caption, or audio description. And through that, I'm able to give a follow-up to each one of the brands, in terms of the opportunity to close the gap towards that 100%. Admittedly, that 100% right now is measured amongst those publishers that are providing that ability. So we are still, far from reaching 100% of the universe. We could do this, but we start by getting 100% where it's possible today.
No, that's always ambitious goals. Always ambitious goals. Phil, let me turn to you, because we've now kind of segued to media and publishers and platforms, and I know you've spent a lot of time understanding the media issues involved in accessibility. Could you talk about that? And I think you also have some national data on closed captioning and audio descriptions as well.
Yes, we do. And just to say, this is something where you have to take a very systematic approach, because what Taide's described can be a really vicious circle where marketers and advertisers can get enthusiastic, but it will break down at the point of the weakest link in the chain. And making sure that it all works is key to be able to get the kind of results that move the needle forwards. And one of the areas we found is that media enablement, particularly for audio description, has been one of the blockages in the UK. There's more that can be done on subtitling as well, but that's pretty well universally enabled. But what we found when it came to audio description was that whereas most of the main channels are quite capable of carrying this, as soon as you work out into the digital environment, so video on demand and the streamers and the smaller channels, things get a lot more patchy. So we're just in the process of completing a comprehensive mapping exercise of UK broadcast. And again, this is part of the template and toolkit, which we hope to be able to export to others who can do the same thing in other markets. What we've also seen on the digital side is that some of the big platforms have done some really innovative work when it comes to automating these processes, and they've been piloting them with advertisers like P&G, but they're now at a stage where this really needs to move into adoption. And what we think we can do is really help drive that further and faster through the work of the Alliance.
That it sounds like you're absolutely right about a systematic approach. And again, I applaud you for saying that this toolkit would be available to others, because it's always so much easier to start, when someone else has done the work. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, just to say, the second part of your question was about the local data. So just to say, there is a huge amount to be done. And while closed captioning and subtitling is the easier thing to do, we're still sitting in the UK with 25% of assets carrying subtitling. So more is without than with. And that makes us one of the leading markets in the world. So in Canada, it's a legal requirement, so that's 100%. But in Europe, it's only Ireland at 30% that's above us. And most markets are lagging. And then on audio description, it's a big hill that we need to climb. It's not just the enablement at the media side. We're looking everywhere at low single-digit percentages when it comes to the enablement of the assets.
And I wonder if that would be something that you can automatically switch on if we're talking television or I guess even the platforms, in the way that you can with subtitles, for example.
I'll let Taide answer that one because I think you've had the experience, but our sense is it's not a thing that's easy to do automatically for every ad.
I see.
Yeah, exactly. It's not automatic as one would think. I had the same, intuition, Deborah. But as we went in and asked, it so happens that by law, the TV publishers, for example, need to have this technology for the content, for the programs, but they don't need to have it for the advertising. The advertising runs in a parallel tech stack, if you want. And then when we want to install that technology, apparently there's a big barrier. Sometimes it's compatible, sometimes it's not compatible. Sometimes it's a matter of a small investment. It's really not that big. So I would really be surprised if it's an issue of investment. I think it's more an issue of prioritizing, that enablement. So it's not it's much more complicated than one would think.
Yeah, no, it sounds like, talk about systems and so on. I'm sure that it takes time, and as soon as you start talking about multiple tech stacks, we all get a little queasy. But
it is true, but I must also say that the fact that many publishers have done it is a demonstration that it can be done.
Yes, yeah, and that's the point. It can be done, and I'm sure with a little pressure from some advertisers, it can be done even faster. So we'll see.
That's the hope.
Taide, you brought up something earlier about, I believe you said extreme reach, and Phil, you have also cited, I believe, their Global Accessibility Maturity Index, and I know that's a lot of words in one chart, but I was actually quite fascinated by some of that information from an international perspective. Would you talk about that, since it just lends itself, from what you were saying before about, the percentages in the UK?
Yes, of course. That's a really good piece of work. It was only published last month. And it's based on Extreme Reach's work in 100 odd markets. They've looked at 800,000 creative assets and 7.8 million ad deliveries. And they're able to measure the percentage of assets that are enabled for closed captioning and audio description. Globally, the number they're coming up with is 17% of the assets are enabled in some way or the other. Universally, the numbers are very low for audio description. We talked a bit about Canada at the top of the tree for subtitling. In Europe, Spain is down at 6%, and there are low numbers below that as well. And that what they've done is they've created an index and a grouping of countries by their level of adoption, from nascent interest, which I think is shorthand for saying not much is happening at the moment, all the way through to fully realized. And there is nobody in the fully realized box. So it just goes to show what kind of journey we've got ahead of us.
Yeah, and I'm assuming that Canada's numbers are so high on some aspects just because it's a dual language nation.
Yes, and you have a legal requirement for subtitling.
It's exactly.
Yeah. Phil, let me ask you one other thing. You have a UK broadcast task force and something called Reframe. Can you define that?
Yes, we published a guide with Flock Associates, who partnered with us at the end of last year, called Reframe, which is a really good quick start guide to accessibility. It's general rather than specific, so it starts to get you to think about the steps that you need to take as an advertiser to work with your agency and with other partners, including broadcasters, as you go through the supply chain, focusing on audio description and on subtitling as well. And it's a really good starter for 10 to get people on the journey. And we're encouraging people to make their own start, to be having the conversations with their agencies and with their partners, because that's the kind of impulse that gets things to move. And then what we're doing is filling in more of the gaps through some more specific work, which I think is going to find its manifestation in the form of playbooks and measurement and some really hard metrics that where we want to see what the adoption rates are really looking like.
Congratulations on that, and I know a lot of people will be using that in the future.
Beyond, of course, holding each of the brands accountable to deliver on the 100%. The work that we have done also to improve creatively the kind of experience that consumers have. I can talk about it. We've been getting better and better at from going from very, very mechanical description of what's happening to becoming a lot more involving and kind of storytelling, almost as if you were hearing a radio ad in parallel to the TV copy. I think that's something we've done pretty well. It's easier to do in those pieces of copy that don't have a lot of words. We have a beautiful Pampers copy. I don't know if there's a way for people to access it, but basically,
yes,
perfect. So I will share that with you. I'll share with you how we have turned a copy that really had music, and you would basically not even know what the brand was about, to another description that very nicely depicts what's happening in a very emotional way and actually connects it also to the brand message that we'd like to pass. The other things we have done is we've partnered with ECTA, which is the European TV and Radio Association, on the day of disability, the Global Accessibility Day. We've done initiatives to drive awareness at the local level. We've done it in the UK, we've done it in Romania, we've done it in Spain, we've done it in France. And essentially, we collaborate with the local TV publishers to do, for example, full breaks without any audio, and then at the end say this would be the experience of someone that has a viewing impairments, or so we kind of try to replicate that and drive broader awareness to the total population in celebrating the Global Accessibility Day. So that's just a couple of initiatives we've recently made.
That's great. That really is an attention getter, and I think that's wonderful, because I think if you look at statistics, if you add the family members and friends who are also, caring about those people that have some kind of impairments, that touches on a pretty big market, doesn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, well, listen, you've both been extraordinary. Let's have extraordinary in your passion for the subject, but also in terms of what you're doing about it. I mean, that's remarkable, and I think it's important to get this kind of information out to a broader market, particularly to other marketers. So, as we wrap up, would you both like to add a few last comments or tell us what's next on your agenda in this category?
So, Deborah, first I'd like to thank you because, as I said, part of the barriers we have is lack of awareness. So your interview is definitely great to help us drive awareness and highlight this possibility for many more advertisers, publishers, and agencies. So very much appreciated. And what's next is we will continue to drive this, as much as we can. First, with Europe in mind, we'd like to make sure that we drive a case and we prove and we can have a model that we can have, we can export elsewhere, together with the Advertising Accessibility Alliance, but in particular, the people that are more active, really walk the talk and be very vocal about it. We're gonna be in Cannes together with Phil again, driving awareness, about this opportunity, working very closely with the WFA and with our publishers, and as well as really working closely, as Phil mentioned it, we work closely with some of our publishers, for example, with Meta, to validate the solutions. So we are kind of their pilot, their lab, where we work together with some of our brands and continue advancing the solutions so we can address the gaps that we still have.
Yeah, I think lots of high-level advocacy. We seem to be doing a fair number of conversations together, Taide and I.
Yes.
And I think we need to accompany that with really practical advice, guidance, case studies. Nothing should stop advertisers from making the first moves now. They shouldn't be waiting for things from us, but we will have things like quick wins guide, playbooks, and measurement frameworks, all of which we'd expect people to be able to pick up and use themselves within their day-to-day. But I think my only ask of anybody in the who's listening to the call is start having the conversations.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, and I'm happy to do my part. As I think you may know, the Internationalist has an initiative that we call Marketing Makes a World of Difference. So we will champion this through that initiative, and the ANA also licenses that from us. So that's a way of also reaching an international audience through us, and then start to penetrate the US market. And actually, Bob Leodis of the ANA was, in all candor, was the one who connected us all after the WFA meeting.
After WFA, yes, indeed.
Amazing.
No, it's a small world, and hopefully we can make a difference. And I'm hoping that next year, when you take over the Palais at Cannes, you'll make sure that there is one app of either silence or for ads that do not have any kind of accompaniment, accessibility accompaniment, or maybe also visual ideas of what it might look like to those, with those impairments. So sometimes showing is the best way to do it, just as storytelling is the best way to get a message out. Happy to help with anything, and looking forward to continuing the conversation.
Thank you so much.
Look forward to it.
A pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you, pleasure.
The Internationalist focuses on the continual reinvention of marketing by highlighting inspirational marketers around the world and their ideas as they move the industry forward. Internationalist Marketing TV shares these perspectives through interviews and personal stories. Thanks so much for watching. If you find this kind of content helpful, please click like or subscribe. Again, thanks so much.